Mary Jane sat on the edge of the creaky old bed and stared out through the damp, dirty window, or at least the part that wasn't stuffed with an old coat to plug the broken pane. They were 2 floors up, but even here the sounds of the house crept in. The fighting next door, loud, brutal, angry, had woken her, and the howling of a baby from the opposite room had kept her awake. The walls were thin, so was her patience. Since moving from the Radcliffe Highway to Bethnal Green Road, she hadn't been on the game, but that came at a cost. Flem, for all his charm, was careless with money, and gambling always seemed to take precedence over food. It annoyed her. She never had enough for the pub or the music hall, which she loved. She'd even considered going back on the game. She'd tried other work, matchboxes, laundry, because Flem hadn't wanted her whoring. But spending all day bent over steam or sulphur for a few coppers, when she could earn 3 times as much in one go, felt like madness. She liked Flem, but he was taking her for granted. Worse, when she complained, he got violent, and Mary Jane hated being controlled. She was on the edge. She looked down at his sleeping form. He'd rolled in drunk again last night, stinking of gin and tobacco. That had really jarred her. She would have loved a night out. She needed one. But when she told him that, he'd turned nasty. She was past caring. She reached over and jabbed him in the ribs.
Oi!
He grumbled.
Piss off.
She poked him again.
You got any money?
He sat up, snapping.
Fuck off, Mary Jane. Not till later. I'll get some after work. Now let me sleep.
A bang came from the wall, a response from the couple next door, clearly pissed off by his shouting. Mary Jane banged back.
You can fuck off too, you noisy bastards.
This only set the baby off again. The wailing started up, louder than before, high-pitched and relentless. Then that wall started thumping. Mary Jane stood abruptly. Her head was pounding. She felt like she was going fucking insane. She dipped her face into the bowl of cold water on the washstand and brushed her hair with short, sharp strokes. Behind her, Flem stirred.
Where the fuck do you think you're going?
Out for a walk,
she said curtly. He was up in a flash, grabbing her by the arm and spinning her around, pressing her hard against the door.
No, you're fucking not.
He growled.
I told you, I'll get some money when I finish work, and I'll come back and take you down the pub, okay?
She stared at him. He was strong, angry, still half drunk, probably hungover. She thought better of resisting. He placed a firm hand around her chin, pushing her head back gently, but with force until it rested against the wood.
Okay?
He repeated. Resigned, she nodded. Satisfied, he let go. His voice softened. The charm slid back into place like a mask.
Come back to bed, love. I've got half an hour before I have to leave.
She hesitated, then nodded again. What choice did she have? They climbed back into bed. The bed creaked loudly, the kind of creak the neighbours wouldn't thank them for. Flem did come back later. Much later, drunk and empty-handed. Mary Jane felt like a prisoner. The feeling wasn't new. It clawed back memories of the Maison Close in France, that gilded hell she'd only just escaped, and not without danger. That place had nearly broken her. Flem was doing the rest. But Mary Jane always found a way. She waited for him to wear himself out trying to be passionate. He slurred sweet nothings, pawed at her, then passed out cold. When his snoring filled the room, she grabbed her bundle, a few rags, her comb, the old scarf, and slipped out. She was skint, hungry, and had nowhere to go. And when you've nowhere to go, there's only one way left. Down. Down from Bethnal Green, down to Whitechapel. She remembered a bloke she'd met off the Radcliffe Highway. Big fella, bit of a rogue. Macca, he'd said. If you're ever stuck, come find me. Well, she was stuck. So Whitechapel it was.
Dorset Street, London. The morning fog still clung to the alleys like a shroud, mixing with the stink of damp brick piss and rotting cabbage. The streets were waking, hawkers setting up stalls, drunks still slumped in doorways, costermongers shouting their wares in hoarse voices. Macca strode out of McCarthy's Chandler's, his long coat billowing slightly as he moved. He was a big man, built like a dockside crane, with the kind of presence that made people step aside without realizing why. His eyes were dark, unreadable, and his mouth set in a way that suggested he wasn't the sort of man who liked repeating himself. His boots struck hard against the cobbles as he turned onto Commercial Street, his path direct, deliberate. He had a job to do. At the edge of the street, standing by a handcart stacked with half-rotten apples and a few wilted greens, a costermonger hawked his wares in a bored, half-hearted chant. His hat was pulled low over his greasy hair, and his coat had seen better days, though so had most men on these streets. Macca stopped beside him. The costermonger tensed, glancing up from his cart as if hoping he was mistaken. He wasn't.
Macca?
He muttered, shifting his weight uncomfortably. Macca smiled a greeting.
All right, mate. How's it going?
The costermonger nodded an okay. Macca leaned in, resting a heavy forearm against the cart, making it creak under the weight.
Saw the missus out the other night.
The costermonger swallowed. His fingers fidgeted with a bruised apple, rolling it in his palm.
Yeah.
He shrugged.
You know how it is sometimes.
Macca exhaled through his nose, straightening up.
Pop down the shop. I might have a bit of extra business. You know.
The costermonger nodded quickly.
Yeah, that'd be great, Macca. Much needed right now.
Macca nodded and gave a knowing wink.
You hear what happened at the Black Swan the other night?
The coster continued.
Some boys raided the place. Made a right mess.
Took some balls to raid that place.
Macca flicked a glance at the costermonger. He smiled wryly.
There will be some very unhappy people.
The costermonger raised his eyebrows.
Do you think it'll all kick off?
Macca gave a slow final nod, then turned, his boots clicking against the wet cobbles as he walked away. He had bigger things to deal with.
The streets churned with life, hawkers barking their wares, the clatter of carts over cobbles, the stink of unwashed bodies, rotting food, and the ever-present tang of horse dung. Caleb walked with purpose, his eyes scanning the faces that blurred past him. He knew these streets better than most, had called them home long enough to understand their rhythm, their dangers, and the people who lurked in the cracks between respectability and ruin. He was looking for Pharaoh. Pharaoh was the kind of man who left a mark, big, loud, dangerous when he wanted to be, but always with a smile that could put a man at ease or set his nerves on edge, depending on Pharaoh's mood. He had his places, his haunts, but today, Caleb wasn't finding him in the usual spots. Then, just as he turned down a narrow slum alley, he heard it, Pharaoh's voice, thick with amusement and menace in equal measure.
Come on now, Martha, don't make me ask again. You know where Turner is.
Caleb slowed his pace, stepping lightly as he approached. He could see them now, Martha, a thin woman in a tattered shawl, backed up against a damp brick wall, her arms folded tight over her chest. And Pharaoh standing too close, grinning, though his eyes held none of the warmth his smile suggested.
I told you.
Martha snapped, her voice sharp but edged with nerves.
Not seen him in ages.
Pharaoh sighed dramatically, shaking his head.
Martha, I'd hate to think you were lying to me.
She held firm.
I'm not.
Before Pharaoh could press further, Caleb stepped into the alley. Pharaoh looked up, and his whole demeanor shifted. His grin widened into something genuine, and he stepped back from Martha, spreading his arms wide.
Well, if it ain't Caleb, out of Newgate and back among the living, eh?
Caleb smirked.
Something like that.
Pharaoh clapped him on the shoulder, hard enough to sting, but there was real fondness there.
Good to see you, mate. Been too long?
Caleb nodded, his eyes flicking to Martha, who still stood tense against the wall.
What's all this about, then?
Pharaoh sighed, as if put upon.
Martha here's holding out on me. Turner's got something of mine, and I need a word with him. But she's playing dumb.
Martha crossed her arms tighter, glaring at both men.
I ain't seen him. Believe what you want, but it don't change the truth.
Pharaoh chuckled, shaking his head like he found the whole thing amusing.
See what I'm dealing with, Caleb? Some people just don't know how to be helpful.
Caleb glanced between them, weighing the situation. He wasn't in the mood for another fight, not yet. But Turner, owing Pharaoh something? Things had obviously changed since he'd been away. And if Turner was hiding, There had to be a reason. Farrow studied Martha carefully, his grin gone, his eyes hard. The jokey warmth he usually carried had drained away, leaving something colder, something far less forgiving. He took a slow step closer, lowering his voice.
I'll ask you again, Martha. Where's Turner?
Martha's jaw tightened. She knew the game. She knew when Farrow was playing and when he wasn't. And right now, he wasn't. For the first time, a flicker of trepidation passed over her face, just for a second. But she held her ground.
I honestly don't know.
Farrow didn't blink. Martha swallowed, then added,
I've been looking for him myself.
That at least sounded true. Caleb, watching, could see the tension coiling tight between them. Farrow wasn't a man who liked being lied to. Whether Martha was telling the truth or not didn't matter. What mattered was that he wasn't getting what he wanted, and that never sat well with him. Farrow turned to Caleb, his expression shifting back to something playful, though there was always an edge to it.
Freebie?
He asked, tilting his head toward Martha. Caleb shrugged, unimpressed.
Nah, you're okay, mate.
Farrow sighed theatrically, turning back to Martha.
Poor old Martha,
he mused.
Can't even give it away these days.
Martha's eyes flashed.
Fuck you!
A beat of silence. Farrow's grin froze, then slowly widened, but there was nothing friendly in it now. He leaned in slightly.
I'm sorry, what did you just say?
Martha hesitated, said nothing. Farrow tilted his head, still smiling.
Are my ears deceiving me, or did you just say fuck you to me?
Martha licked her lips, shifting on her feet. Then, with a forced casualness, she shrugged.
I was joking.
Farrow didn't reply right away. He just stared at her, letting the moment stretch, the weight of his silence pressing down. Then, with slow, deliberate ease, he reached out and toyed with the frayed edge of her shawl, rubbing the worn fabric between his fingers. His voice, when it came, was smooth but low, dangerous.
If you see Turner, be sure to let me know, won't you? I don't appreciate people taking advantage of my pleasant nature.
He gave the shawl a little tug, just enough to make his point.
It upsets me, if you know what I mean.
Martha's face twitched just slightly. She gave a quick, stiff nod, then turned on her heel and scurried off down the alleyway, not looking back. Farrow watched her go, rolling his shoulders like a man shaking off an annoyance. Then he turned back to Caleb, all casual again, as if nothing had happened.
Fancy a drink?
Mary Jane looked up at the cracked, swaying lantern-style sign above the doorway. Cooley's lodging house, 4p a bed per night. Christ, she thought, this looks like a right fucking shithole. And she wasn't wrong. Now she lay on a lice-ridden mattress, trying not to retch at the stench of sweat, damp and cheap gin. Around her, a symphony of snores, groans, and the occasional muttered curse filled the air. Some of the women sounded like they were dying. Others smelled like they already had. How the fuck did I end up here? She asked herself, not for the first time. She wasn't ready to give in to this. Not yet. She still had some pride, some fire. She sat up and looked around. In the kitchen, over a chipped mug of weak tea, she'd spoken to one of the women. Haggard, toothless, maybe 40 but looking 70. The woman said some of them were reduced to working for 4p a time just to afford the bed. Mary Jane shivered. She wasn't there yet, and she swore she never would be. She had to find a way out. Then came Barney. He worked at Bishopsgate Fish Market, hauling crates and slabs of stinking cod for decent pay. He wasn't the sharpest blade in the drawer, not by a long stretch, but he was pleasant enough, especially compared to the feral, dead-eyed villains that haunted the back streets of Whitechapel. There were still a few decent men around. Not many, but a few. Mary Jane had been around long enough to learn how to spot the difference. It was her sixth sense, her instinct, if you like. She prided herself on it, even if phlegm had gone sour in the end. But that, she told herself, had been the gambling. When addiction bites, all is lost. The game owns him. She'd learned that lesson the hard way and vowed not to make the same mistake twice. Barney, though, was different, or seemed to be. He was smitten with her from the off. almost embarrassingly so. And truth be told, she didn't mind. After a week in Cooley's, a clean bed, warm food, and a few nights at the music hall felt like salvation. It was too good an offer to pass up. Their second meeting was in the 10 Bells. Mary Jane could tell he was captivated. They sat side by side on the bench in the pub. The place was warm, loud, familiar, gin fumes and laughter swirling together like smoke. Barney sat close, a little too close, shoulders angled toward her, eyes soft with something like adoration. Mary Jane knew the look. He was already taken with her. She didn't quite feel the same. But after everything she'd been through with men, hope, disappointment, heartbreak, danger, something simple, convenient and uncomplicated suddenly had appeal. Barney wasn't cruel. He was generous with his money, eager to please, and didn't ask too many questions. Maybe that was enough.
I spent 2 weeks in France.
She said, swirling the gin in her glass, watching the light catch it.
That was more than enough.
Didn't like it then?
Barney asked, curious. She shook her head, a note of irony creeping into her voice.
No, you could say that.
I'd have thought France would be nice.
He leaned in, smiling gently.
Did they call you Marie Jeanette?
She let out a short laugh.
Yeah, if you like.
Barney beamed at that as if he'd been given some private treasure. Mary Jane took another sip, studying him out of the corner of her eye. Maybe, she thought, this could work. No passion, no heartbreak, just comfort. For now, that sounded like heaven. Within a day of meeting, they were lodging together in a cramped but dry room. She had, for now at least, retired from the game.
The International Workers' Men's Club stood in Berner Street. The meeting room was packed, covered in a haze of smoke, and the assembled workers, who were buzzing with excitement as Pyotr the Russian anarchist took the stage to much cheering and applause.
Comrades, brothers, sisters in toil, look around you at these bare walls, these benches, this narrow hall packed to the rafters. What do you see? Poverty, the faces of men and women worn down by ceaseless labor, the hands of youth already twisted by the machine, and yet, look again, for on these very walls hang the spirits who guide us, Marx who taught us to strike the chains, Proudhon who showed us the theft of property, Lassalle who smote the golden calf of capitalism. Even Mrs. Grundy, the greedy bourgeois hag in her silks and jewels, is here mocked for all to see, clutching treasure she stole from our blood and sweat, while we beg her for a crust of bread, a single penny to feed our children.
The club was dimly lit, the air thick with pipe smoke and the scent of cheap ale. 3 men sat amongst the assembled. Coase, young and ambitious, Dimmy, older and an ideologue, and Sam, a hard-working hat-maker.
What you see all around you,
Pyotr declared, his voice deep and commanding,
is degradation, misery, destitution, vice and violence. Families packed 10 to a room while the fancy upper-class English lounge in their palatial West End residences and grow fat off the sweatshop labour of our countrymen.
Dimmy, the owner of the club, leaned forward, rubbing his chin.
And what are you planning?
He yelled out. Pyotr grinned, his teeth flashing in the low light.
Panic!
Koza let out an eager laugh, while Sam, a hat-maker, nodded solemnly.
When?
Dimmy shouted. Pyotr spread his hands.
Now! The streets are ready to explode, like a keg of gunpowder, just waiting for the right spark.
There was cheering and applause. The men exchanged glances, excitement replacing the dull monotony of their everyday lives, the tedium of endless toil, the oppression, the hopelessness. It was about to be replaced by something far more thrilling. Anarchy. Ringers, the Britannia pub, Commercial Street. The Britannia, or Ringers as it was better known, was thick with noise, heat, and the smell of beer, sweat, and damp tobacco. It was a place for those who didn't ask too many questions, where deals were struck over pints and grudges were settled with fists or steel. Caleb leaned against the bar, nursing a gin and water, watching Farrow throw his arm around a giggling girl, his other hand slapping a passing mate on the back. The man never stopped moving, always grinning, always talking, like he thrived on the chaos. In between his flirting and banter, Farrow turned back to Caleb.
Things have changed since you've been inside, mate. Whitechapel's crawling.
Caleb took a slow sip, watching the room.
Yeah, changed how?
Farrow exhaled, rolling his shoulders.
Gangs everywhere now, not just the old lot. We got the blind beggars still running Bethnal Green, but now you got the elephants coming up from down south, sniffing about, looking to muscle in. Fenians getting bolder. The Dorset Street lot still running their patch, but the foreigners...
He took a drink, lowering his voice slightly.
They're the ones making real moves now.
Caleb arched a brow.
Immigrants?
Farrow nodded, gaze flicking around.
Poles, Russians, Jews, hard bastards. They don't play the same games as us, don't drink with us, don't mix. And some of them are scary fuckers.
Caleb smirked.
You, scared?
Farrow pulled a face.
I'm telling you, mate, there's one bloke in particular, Ivan.
Caleb frowned, the name unfamiliar.
Who's Ivan?
Farrow leaned in, voice dropping.
Enforcer. Works for some Russian lot out of Wentworth Street. And I ain't ashamed to say it. He scares the absolute shit out of me.
Caleb studied him. Farrow didn't scare easy. If this Ivan had him rattled, that meant something. Farrow took another drink, eyes darting around the pub like he half expected the man to appear.
Whitechapel ain't what it used to be, mate. And trust me, it's only getting worse.
Back room of a pub, Old Nickel, the dark heart of the East End. The air was thick with sweat, smoke, and something else. Something fouler, harder to define. Macca hated it here. The Old Nickel was the lowest of the low, a place where violence wasn't just expected, but inevitable. The walls sweated grime. The air carried the stale reek of unwashed bodies, and the men inside these back rooms, feral. Tonight, Macca half listened as the conversation ebbed and flowed. Gossip about scores, who'd been knifed, who'd been found in the gutter, rumors about who was behind the Black Swan robbery. And the Tyler gang sat in front of him. Of all the filth in the East End, these bastards were the worst. Ruthless, unforgiving, not to be trusted, and Macca didn't like them. But in the right circumstances, having men like this on your side was better than having them against you. He leaned forward, rolling his brass knuckles in his palm as he spoke, keeping his voice calm but firm.
So, lads, anything you got to tell me?
The Tylers shrugged ignorance, throwing looks at each other before one of them, a ratty-looking bastard with a scar across his cheek, spoke up.
Rumors, Macca. Other than that, ain't heard nothing.
Macca studied them. Lies? He'd bet his last coin they knew something about the Black Swan raid. But with this lot, you didn't push. You didn't accuse. That kind of mistake could turn this already tense room into a slaughterhouse real quick. Instead, Macca sat back, exhaling through his nose, acting like he half believed them. He smiled congenially.
Heard nothing about the Black Swan?
His tone was casual, but they all knew it wasn't a request. There was a pause. Then Scarface grinned, yellow teeth glinting.
Nothing to do with us, Macca. The rumors are that it was well planned, well executed. Does that sound like us?
Maybe, Macca thought, but then he scanned the Tyler crew and thought, maybe not. This lot didn't do guile when brute force was available. He wasn't here for a fight, and he wasn't here to make enemies. He was here for the deal with these lads, and he might need to call those favors in down the line. So instead of pressing them, he just handed the cash under the table to the nearest crew member.
Drop the stuff down to the back of the shop tomorrow, then.
The ratty Tyler nodded and grinned, while his mate next to him counted the money.
No problem, Governor.
Macca stood to go.
And I'm not going to get our lady friend Laura Norder pay me a visit with this little lot, I hope.
The head Tyler held his hands out in feigned indignance.
Macca, you know us better than that. We never get caught. Well, not very often anyway.
The Tyler gang all let out smiles, grins, and a little laughter, accentuating pleads of integrity. Macca nodded, not quite knowing what he'd let himself in for.
Right then, I'll be seeing you.
And with that, he walked out, grateful to be leaving the shithole alive.
Commercial Street, Whitechapel. The streets were thick with noise. Market traders hollering, horses clattering over cobbles. the air sharp with the mingling smells of roasting chestnuts, wet wool, and unwashed bodies. Macca walked with purpose, his long coat shifting as he moved, scanning the faces that passed him by. And then he saw Mary Jane, sitting on a crate near a street vendor, gnawing on a pig's trotter, grease shining on her fingers. He smirked.
Well, fed up with the highway then. What brings you down here?
Mary Jane looked up, grinning, chewing as she spoke.
Well, you know how it is.
Macca nodded, lighting a cigarette.
Where are you staying?
George Street.
On your own?
No, with a friend.
Macca raised an eyebrow but didn't press. He liked Mary Jane, always had. She had something about her, a charm that most of the girls in Whitechapel lacked. And more importantly, he knew he could do good business with her. He took a drag from his cigarette, exhaling slowly.
The offer still stands, you know. If you need a place to stay, a bit of work, come and see me.
He flicked his chin toward the east.
The Chandler's shop, Dorset Street.
Mary Jane didn't dismiss it outright. If anything, she looked like she was considering it. She smiled, playing coy.
Maybe.
Macca grinned.
You see that you do. I'll see you okay.
Okay, thank you.
Macca nodded toward the pig's trotter in her hand.
Shouldn't eat them, girl. Make you ill.
Mary Jane laughed, swiping at the grease running down her chin with the back of her hand.
I know. I was hungry, and it seemed like a good idea at the time.
Macca grinned, shaking his head.
A lot of things do.
She smiled back. Then they went their separate ways, each one disappearing into the busy, unforgiving streets of Whitechapel.
Mary Jane's thoughts drifted back to her first encounter with Macca. It was just before last Christmas on the highway. She had taken up lodgings with a new lady, Mrs. Carthy. She remembered. Mary Jane had stumbled into the communal kitchen that morning, her head in her hands, still drowning in the thick fog of a brutal hangover. The tail end of the previous night's laudanum binge wasn't doing her any favours either. Without so much as a glance at the others in the room, she slumped onto a chair.
Bloody hell, she looks rough,
said a broad-shouldered man leaning against the back doorway, arms crossed, smirking.
Oh dear,
chimed in Mrs. Carthy, already halfway through peeling a potato.
Seems Miss Mary Jane's suffering from another hangover.
The man chuckled.
Looks like a proper bad one.
John Carthy, halfway through his bacon and eggs, spoke around a mouthful.
Yeah, and Miss Mary Jane better watch her fucking step if she talks to me again like she did last night.
She give you a bit of stick, Jono?
The man asked, clearly enjoying himself.
Can't handle her fucking drink, that one,
John muttered, jabbing his fork at his plate.
Yes, well, Miss Mary Jane does have a delicate constitution,
Mrs. Carthy said, eyeing the girl.
Don't you, sweetheart?
Mary Jane said nothing.
She looks like the sort of rough and ready bird who'd be a right handful.
The man went on, fishing for a reaction. Mary Jane slowly raised her bleary eyes to the voice. Her head throbbed, her vision swam, but eventually her focus found him.
Who are you?
She mumbled. The man laughed, full-throated and amused.
That,
Mrs. Carthy said with a smile,
is John's cousin Macca.
Hello, Mary Jane,
Macca said with a grin. She dropped her gaze again, head back in her hands, and gave a half-hearted wave. Macca chuckled.
How long's she been lodging with you?
Since she got chucked out of her last place,
Mrs. Carthy answered.
Really?
Macca said, feigning surprise.
They kicked her out. What for?
Being a bitch,
John said, knocking back his tea. Macca smirked.
Nothing you can't handle, eh, Jono?
She's all right,
Mrs. Carthy said, softening.
Just gets rowdy after a few gins. Don't you, darling?
Don't we all?
Macca added, eyes back on Mary Jane. She looked up at him again. He winked, and something in that sly gesture felt oddly comforting, despite the man's obvious air of danger. She said nothing, but didn't look away as quickly this time.
Want a tea, sweetheart?
Mrs. Carthy offered. Mary Jane nodded faintly.
If she talks to me like that again,
John began.
Leave her be, John,
Mrs. Carthy said firmly, pouring the tea.
Send her my way if you can't handle her,
Macca said with a smirk. John gave him a look. Macca just laughed. Then his tone shifted, softening slightly.
You ever get stuck or in trouble, Mary Jane, you come and find me, all right? Chandler's shop on Dorset Street. I'll see you right.
Mary Jane glanced up again. This time she gave him a proper nod. A glimmer of gratitude flickered in her eyes. Macca popped on his billycock hat.
Well, I'd better get back, left Harry minding the shop, poor sod.
See you later, Macca,
Mrs. Carthy said.
Later, cousin.
John muttered through a mouthful. Mary Jane managed a small smile as Macca gave her one last wink before heading out. Mary Jane was shocked out of her reminiscing daydream as a horse-drawn bus nearly flattened her. She composed herself and drifted off back to George Street.
Upstairs at the Blind Beggar, the aftermath of the Black Swan raid. The upstairs room of the Blind Beggar was dimly lit, the air thick with pipe smoke and the sharp scent of gin. Around a rickety wooden table, the three robbers from the Black Swan raid counted their stolen money, fingers grimy with sweat and excitement. One of them, a wiry, sharp-eyed man named Toby, grinned as he stacked a few sovereigns.
Not bad work, lads. Not bad at all.
The other two, Paddy and little Alfie, chuckled, raising their drinks in celebration. They were confident. No one was onto them, no heat, no whispers, just easy money. But then, the knock at the door. The laughter died. Glances were exchanged. They were expecting a visitor, but that didn't mean they were looking forward to it. Toby cleared his throat.
Come in.
The door swung open, and the mood in the room turned instantly. A man of foreign descent stepped inside, moving with the easy grace of someone used to command. He was sharply dressed, educated, a man who chose his words carefully but expected to be obeyed without question. He radiated power, not just the kind earned through violence, but the kind that comes from true intelligence. His name, Abraham. And behind him, Ivan. The enforcer ducked slightly as he entered, his bulk almost too large for the doorway. He was a hulking brute, dressed plainly, his features utterly void of humor or humanity. There was something in his eyes, something dead, something hungry. He didn't need to speak to make men afraid. And just like that, the robbers' celebrations were over. The three of them sat straighter, their hands instinctively moving away from the money as if it might offend their visitors. Abraham took a seat, steepling his fingers. His smile was small, polite, but it never touched his eyes. Ivan remained standing.
So?
Abraham said smoothly, his accent faint but distinct.
Tell me about the Black Swan.
None of them dared hesitate. None of them dared lie, because in his presence they were under no illusion. This was not a man to trifle with. Abraham leaned back in his chair, watching the three thieves with a look of mild amusement. His sharp, intelligent eyes flicked between them as he spoke, his tone smooth, measured, but carrying weight.
Any problems?
Toby, Paddy, and Alfie all shook their heads, eager to keep things running smoothly.
No problems. None at all.
The visitor smiled, though there was no warmth in it.
Good. Let's keep it that way.
He glanced down at the pile of ill-gotten gains on the table, then back at them.
But I have heard stories.
The room stilled. Abraham tapped a slender finger against his temple.
People are not happy. People with connections, power. The Black Swan was not just any pub.
He let the statement hang in the air, letting them draw their own conclusions.
So be careful. I may have more work for you in the future.
Toby nodded quickly, eager to show loyalty. He pushed a stack of money forward, offering up half the take.
Your share, of course.
The visitor grinned, showing just a little too much teeth.
Yes, but then there is the matter of my nominal fee for protection.
He gestured toward Ivan. The hulking enforcer remained silent, his dark, soulless eyes fixed on the pile of money like a predator watching its prey.
In my calculations,
Abraham continued, voice casual,
that means an extra 25%.
The room tensed. Paddy and Alfie shifted uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. 75%? That was a heavy cut. Paddy's mouth opened to protest. Bad move. Before he could speak, Ivan moved. The massive enforcer stepped forward and reached across the table, his huge hands sweeping the majority of the money into his own grasp. It was more than 75%. It was most of it. The blind beggar boys froze, their fingers twitching slightly toward their blades, but they didn't dare. Ivan stared them down, daring them to object. They didn't. Abraham stood, adjusting his cuffs as if the entire exchange had been nothing more than routine business.
Keep aware,
he said simply.
I will be in touch.
Paddy, despite every instinct telling him to shut up, couldn't help himself.
For what exactly?
Toby and Alfie visibly tensed. They knew a mistake when they heard one. Abraham slowly turned, fixing Paddy with a look that made his stomach drop. He stepped forward, placing a firm hand on the younger man's shoulder, squeezing just enough to remind him of his place.
For what I decide, when I decide.
His voice was soft, almost disarmingly polite.
And you'll be ready, won't you?
Paddy gulped, nodded. The visitor patted his shoulder once, then turned back toward the door. Ivan followed, the stolen money now his. As the door clicked shut, the three blind beggar boys sat in stunned silence, staring at the near-empty table. Toby exhaled slowly.
Fuck me. What have we got ourselves into?
Lodging house, Flower and Dean Street. The air was thick with the stench of sweat, mildew, and unwashed bodies. Caleb had smelled Newgate's rot, but somehow this was worse, closer, more personal. The Weasley attendant at the door had taken his 4 pence without so much as a word, then waved him toward a cramped, airless room. Inside, there were 4 wooden boxes, each with straw pillows and sheets that looked like they hadn't been cleaned in years. Caleb had slept in bad places before, but this was low. He squeezed into his box, trying not to think about the thousands of lice probably crawling in the sheets. The walls were filthy, crawling with insects. The window left open to let in the distant sounds of the East End at night, shouting, footsteps, drunken laughter. The other 3 men in the room smelled like they hadn't bathed in months. One snored loudly, another twitched in his sleep, muttering about something Caleb couldn't make out. The third one scratched himself constantly, making the sound of fingernails on skin just another part of the night's miserable symphony. And then, a fight downstairs. It started as raised voices, then the sound of glass breaking, a chair scraping violently against the floor, and then a heavy thud. Someone screamed, more shouting. Then, nothing. The fight had either been settled, or someone was unconscious. Caleb didn't care either way. He shifted on the wooden planks, trying to get comfortable. Then, from the next room, the unmistakable sounds of a couple fucking. Grunting, moaning, the bed frame knocking against the wall. Caleb could hear the woman panting, the man growling, the 2 of them rutting like animals in heat. One of the men in his room groaned in irritation. Another let out a snort of laughter in his sleep. Caleb just stared at the ceiling, feeling the itch of unseen insects crawling over his skin. The sounds continued. He lay there, eyes open, sweating, listening to snoring, scratching, muttering, fighting, fucking. There was no sleep tonight, just another long, miserable night in Whitechapel. A new day, a new hustle. The early morning light struggled to break through the soot-stained fog that hung over Whitechapel. The streets were already alive with costermongers setting up their carts, urchins darting between them, and the occasional hungover wretch staggering out of a gin shop. Caleb, exhausted and stiff, stood on the corner, rubbing at his aching neck. Pharaoh appeared, grinning like a fox, hands deep in his coat pockets.
Morning, sunshine. Sleep well?
Caleb let out a dry laugh, shaking his head.
I'd have been better off carrying the banner and kipping in Itchy Park.
Pharaoh chuckled, lighting a thin, cheap cigarette.
Should have smashed a pub window, spent the night in a cell. At least it's dry.
Caleb snorted.
Yeah, and a warder knocking my head against the wall for snoring too loud.
He rolled his shoulders, trying to shake off the stiffness.
Nah, mate. Need something better than that. You got work going.
Pharaoh hesitated, his grin fading just a little.
Not sure. Ain't my call anymore.
That made Caleb pause. Pharaoh not in charge? He narrowed his eyes.
Who's running things then?
Pharaoh glanced around, then gestured for Caleb to follow.
Come with me. I'll introduce you.
Caleb didn't like the sound of that, but work was work. And in Whitechapel, a man without work was a man soon to be starving.
All right,
he said.
Let's go.
A change of plans at the Well-Close Square Tavern. The Well-Close Square Tavern in Ship's Alley was a den of noise and smoke, filled with sailors, dockers, and cutthroats looking to drink, gamble, or fight. The air was thick with the stink of sweat, ale, and the briny scent of men fresh off the ships. Behind the bar, Lucy moved fast, pouring drinks, slapping away wandering hands, and dodging lewd comments with the ease of someone long used to it. Her man, Tommy, flitted in and out, keeping an eye on things. On Lucy, mostly. He wasn't the jealous type, but he was protective, making sure no one got too familiar. Every now and then, he'd check in, ask if she was all right, maybe brush her arm before heading back into the crowd. Then a drunken sailor got too mouthy, and Tommy's mood soured. The brief altercation ended with the sailor on his ass, but Tommy was fuming, and Lucy felt the shift in him before he even turned her way.
You're too slow,
he snapped, stepping behind the bar.
Serve quicker. Stop standing about.
Lucy bit back a reply, knowing better than to argue when Tommy was in a mood. Then a figure appeared at the bar, a sinister-looking man, lean and wolfish, eyes dark and unreadable. Tommy caught his gaze, then jerked his chin in acknowledgement.
Got to step out.
His voice was tight. He threw Lucy a hard look.
Get on with your work.
Then he followed the dark figure out back. Lucy sighed, wiped a spill off the counter, and went back to serving. It wasn't long before the groping hands started again, rough fingers on her waist, a paw on her backside.
Watch yourself.
She warned a grinning deckhand, twisting away from his reach.
Want another drink or a broken wrist?
The sailor laughed, but he backed off for now. Minutes passed, then the sinister man reappeared from the back. He didn't say a word, just adjusted his coat and slipped out the door, vanishing into the night. Moments later, Tommy returned. His face was set, his jaw tight.
We're moving,
he said abruptly. Lucy blinked.
Where?
Me and my brother got another pub to look after, in Whitechapel.
She studied him. Something had changed. Something from that meeting out back. But she knew better than to ask. Instead, she nodded slowly and went back to pouring drinks.
The Crown Public House. Upstairs. The room was silent, save for the distant murmur of the tavern beyond. The thick, sour scent of pipe smoke clung to the air, mixing with the damp, earthy smell of the floorboards. At the center of it all, Joseph sat behind his scarred wooden desk, fingers lightly tapping the surface. Behind him, Ivan and Abraham stood motionless, their cold eyes fixed on nothing in particular, but their presence alone was enough to set the nerves on edge. Pharaoh and Caleb stood before them. Joseph's gaze settled on Caleb, sharp and appraising. He gave a slight nod toward him.
Who's he?
The abruptness of the question caught Caleb off guard. A flicker of discomfort passed over his face, though he tried not to show it. Pharaoh turned his head toward him, then back to Joseph.
He's a good man, reliable, one of my old crew.
Joseph said nothing at first, just stared at Caleb, long enough for the silence to grow uncomfortable. Long enough for Caleb to wonder if he'd already made a mistake being here. Then, finally, he leaned back in his chair and gave a slow nod.
Okay, well, Ivan here will show you your next job.
His voice was measured, casual, but there was an edge to it.
And your friend can help.
Joseph's eyes flicked back to Pharaoh.
It's down to you. He's your responsibility, though.
Pharaoh nodded once.
Understood.
Caleb cast a quick glance toward Ivan, who had yet to move, yet to speak. A solid wall of quiet menace. Something about him felt off. A presence too still, too controlled, like a predator waiting for the right moment to move. Trouble. Caleb kept his face neutral, but inside he was already wondering what the hell he'd just walked into.